Hey, welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. We have a bunch of craziness to talk about today, a plethora of craziness. Uh, it's Martin Luther King Day, Martin Luther King Jr., whatever it is. Okay. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about that. It's interesting. I think you'll enjoy hearing it. Then I'm going to cover a whole bunch of other stuff. First off, welcome to everyone. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Uh, you will find that on here we try to address all the idiocy. Well, it's impossible to address all of the idiocies, isn't it? I mean, you get up in the morning and you just feel like you've been slapped with a fish on each side of the head, a fish named idiocy, and it just never seems to stop. Uh, but dealing with it is important, and half of it's just, half of it's funny, half of it's dangerous, and then a third half which shows you how idiotic things are, is a little bit of both. But we're going to get to all of that. So thank you all for being here. Welcome. I will ask that you please subscribe, like it, hit that thumbs up, whatever it is. I'm sorry that they took away the thumbs down. I always enjoyed seeing, how many thumbs down I had because it lets me know how many people I'm taking off, which is always a good barometer of how you're doing. Um, so do that. Subscribe, uh, thumbs up, share it if you would. This is the way that we get back at my little small way. I'm hoping that it will grow into a larger way. That's entirely up to you all. So if you will share it and if you like it and all that kind of stuff, we'll build us up and have maybe a little bit larger footprint in our response to the other side that's trying to take our country down. I'll start off with something about it. It's not a part necessarily of the news of today, but it kind of is. And I realized that it was a Martin Luther King Day. And this is going to, oh, I'm sorry. I do this occasionally. I forgot. If you would like to support this channel, we also have a Patreon channel. It's pretty much the same I put whatever we do here on YouTube. And of course, if you're watching on Patreon, it's whatever we do here on Patreon. But it's everything that goes on YouTube. Plus, I add other things. Okay. And I think you'll enjoy it. If you enjoy what we're talking about here, you'll enjoy the extra stuff over there. And it's a great way for you to support what we're doing here for $1 a month or whatever. I've been surprised. And thank you very much for those of you who are contributing more per month. You certainly don't have to, but I appreciate it. And it's a great way for anybody to contribute and kind of, be a part of the fight for $1 a month. Okay, so back to this morning, I realized it was Martin Luther King Day. It's not a holiday that I particularly observe or celebrate. I don't think much of the man. I'll say it right up front. And I noticed that there was that Steven Crowder had something. They're one of the news aggregators that I check. I don't remember which one. Had a link to him, Steven Crowder, on the 5 things you didn't know about Martin Luther King Jr. Many of you do know these things. He wasn't the sterling personality that so many people make him out to be. I think that all over our country today, people are upholding him as this paragon of virtue. Not hardly. Not hardly. Did he do, did he have some good points? Did he do a couple of good things? Yes, I'm not going to argue with that. But he has been lionized in such a way that blows him completely out of the extent to which he should be upheld. And Crowder did a good job of it. And I'm going to put the link down here. I'll put the link to his. There's a video on there that you might want to watch too. It was interesting, and I myself had forgotten about this, that he did excuse rioting. And he referred to it, I won't get this exactly right, but the way that underprivileged, and I believe that he referred to blacks with one of the N words that nobody is supposed to say. One of the ways that they are able to get goods with the same ease that the white man does with his purse. Okay, meaning buying it, right? Okay. Now, I think that, now way back when, we know that there were large problems, big problems, to where that a black person couldn't go into a store and necessarily be served, equally. I get that, and it was wrong, and I'm not defending that a bit, and I'm sure none of you are either. But at the time he was saying that, there were plenty of places, uh, it, whether somebody was sold something or not had to do with whether they had the money, not whether they were black or white. Okay, so you know, you can go in and get new Nikes with cash, whatever color you are. Anyway, that's going back. My older son came down uh, from from his room, and I said, "Hey, what do you know about Martin Luther King? What do they teach you at school?" This is going to be surprising to a lot of you out there about public schools. I said, "What do you know about Martin Luther King?" He said, "Well," he says, I know he wasn't all that. He wasn't all that good." I said, "Really, where did you hear that?" I figured, I don't know that I've talked about King all that much because it just doesn't come up, right? He said, "Well, we learned it at school." I says, "Really?" Yeah, he says, "We learned he had all sorts of problems. He wasn't the good person that everybody, seems to think that he was. Here's a good, lesson. My kids, and now we have a lot of people that are rail a lot about the public school system. Let me see if am I slouching too much? That rail against the public school system, and I will too. There are a lot of problems in many of the public schools. However, it's not universal, and I think that's what people need to understand. My kids go to it might be the largest school district in Kansas, I'm not sure. It's certainly the most affluent. It's one that people think, oh, those people don't know anything and they're just being shoveled all this liberal stuff and all that. Not a bit. Our schools here are so conservative, you would be amazed. And that's why we keep them in public schools. There have been very few times where they have come home, with a lesson plan or having been taught something that was a little bit off there, and we've addressed that. We've corrected that with them and with the teacher and with the administration, and haven't had any problems since then. But they, for instance, he's been taught. He's had teachers say, the Civil War wasn't what you have been taught that it was. All sorts of things, so I'm going to leave it there because I could go on for a long time with that, and that's not what this one is about. We have a lot to get to here, but it depends on your public school. Not all of them are bad, so take that into consideration when you're selecting your school. If ours were bad, we'd move the kids out. Okay, let's start here. Do you remember that Muslim terrorist that took the hostages in the synagogue down in Texas? Was it yesterday, the day before, whenever it was? I've had a lot going on. I don't know. That Muslim terrorist that nobody would identify at first, nobody could figure out why he did it. The FBI assured everyone that the Jewish population was not at all targeted in this. It had nothing to do with that at all. And we don't know why he did what he did. Well, okay, let's start off today's. Now, I was going to talk about this stuff tomorrow, so if it seems, one day late, I apologize, but I had something else going on tomorrow. So we have here our fearless leader, Joe Biden, on Muslim hostage taker. He says, "I don't think there is sufficient information to know why he targeted that synagogue." And we have a picture of him looking out there with his normal, intelligent look. So I was talking about, the FBI on Saturday night, that was a couple of nights ago, said they are still working to find the Muslim terrorist's motive. And then Joe says, "I don't think there is sufficient information to know why he targeted that synagogue, why he insisted on the release of someone who's been in prison for over 10 years, why he was using anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli comments. We just don't have all the facts." Okay, thank you, Joe. I think you've just proved why people think the way they do about you. Then we have the FBI has finally, with their vast resources, been able to figure out, and here's their statement, Here's the breaking. This comes from the postmillennial.com. Breaking. After outcry, FBI admits the Jewish community was targeted in a synagogue hostage taking. Well, there's a surprise. We're so happy with all the money that we give the federal government and this illustrious FBI. You know, I used to have. Well, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that alone. I happen to know the director who took over the FBI, who succeeded Hoover. Clarence Kelly was his name. He was a former chief of police here in Kansas City. He'd been a former FBI agent, and he was the chief of police here in Kansas City when I was a youngin' and lived 2 doors up from my girlfriend. So I always had a high opinion of the FBI back then. Then I worked with them later. I'll leave that lay. So the FBI has now released a statement last night, attempting to walk back their previous comments that the hostage taking at a Texas synagogue, right? Jewish, on the Jewish Sabbath, Saturday, during services when they were there, okay, was not specifically related to the Jewish community. Interesting. In the new statement, the FBI said, this is a terrorism-related matter. They found out they could get some politics out of this. Terrorism-related. I think what we see here, yep, I just see it here. I did. I thought they're going to implement their joint terrorism task force, and I see it later in the sentence. This is a terrorism-related matter in which the Jewish community was targeted and is being investigated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Well, good for you guys. You guys finally figured it out. And then, let's see here. Biden's FBI, the Islamic terrorists who held Jews. Well, what they had said before, he was singularly focused on one issue that was not specifically related to the Jewish community. Well, that's not true at all. So this guy, he wanted this girl out of this Aifia Siddiqui, known as Lady Al Qaeda. He wanted her released. So what they're concerned with now, we've had enough of this, but what they're concerned is now is finding his motive for going after this specific target. Okay. Interesting. I think I can tell, can't you? Next. After SCOTUS hit, this is from Red State, after SCOTUS hit, companies are ditching their vaccine mandates like a bad habit. Really? Well, did we call that one? We talked about that a little while back, right? It says here from Red State, thanks to the United States Supreme Court's epic hit, Joe, they call him a name. I'm not going to call him a name like that. His OSHA vaccine mandate has been struck down, but even as far back as December, the handwriting was on the wall. After the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued the preliminary injunction on the OSHA mandate back in November, companies like General Electric and Union Pacific decided to put a pause on their push to force vaccinate employees. Others have since fallen suit. See, this is the thing here is that it illustrates the importance of fighting back, of resisting, and it further illustrates the success of it. There's too many people out there on our side that throw up their, and you know what? I don't know that they're really on our side. Anybody who would just throw up their hands and go, well, nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. Politics don't work. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. I don't know that they're on our side. I mean, they're doing more harm than good, and they're certainly not helping. So if somebody's not helping and they're doing more harm than good, are they on your side or not? For any of you out there who's on that line, kind of acted like that in the past, you might give a second look at your, at your thought processes and your behavior. And if you feel like it, come on and join the resistance. Be a part of it. Stand up. So enough with the scare tactics. They go on. Red State goes on, as everybody and their mother knows that, okay, we're getting into areas here that I'm just not going to say on here because I don't want this to be taken off. But anyway, they said the Biden administration has lost its cudgel and the media has lost its narrative. So true. While one SCOTUS decision was reasonable reason to celebrate, the justice still upheld the CMA vaccine mandate, which affects healthcare workers. That's true. So sadly, doctors, nurses, and emergency personnel are still subject to the suspension and termination if they refuse to get the jab. However, certain hospitals, and here's where it's important, certain hospitals and medical centers have decided that the staffing shortages are too big a price to pay and are forsaking the ill-advised mandates. Excellent. Those hospitals and medical centers are going to have the best people come to work for them. Good for them. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. And in the hospitals, yeah, I still have contacts in the hospitals. They are a mess. They're short-staffed. Don't go to a hospital if you can help it. Okay, we talked the other day about inflation and how the Fed had come out and suggested, I forget, was it the Fed or was it Yellen? Doesn't matter, somebody. And suggested that they were looking at probably 2 rate hikes in 2022. Okay, hikes of the interest rate. Now, what does that do when we raise the interest rate? It makes it more difficult for borrowers, and that's not just people, on their credit cards. And I mean, if you're living on credit cards, come on, stop it. Find a new way, get another job, whatever. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be killed when these things happen, because another video for another time. Let me see. Okay, somebody sent me a message. However, it goes up the chain. Everybody who is operating on credit, which a lot of businesses do, the banks do it themselves. Every time that goes up, the cost of everything goes up. Now, they use interest rate hikes in order to fight inflation, ostensibly. But you got to wonder which is worse. And at some point, the treatment becomes worse than the disease. But Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, who's a smart guy, and people have listened to for years, he says, nope, not 2 rate hikes in 2022, 6 or 7. 6 or 7 interest rate hikes. I don't have to go into any more than that. You know what that means. Now, the New York Times. The New York Times is warning us of a right-wing threat to democracy. It calls to war game, insurgency, secession, and civil war. Where did this come from? It says the U.S. may be on the verge. Where does this come from? It comes from Breitbart. The U.S. may be on the verge of collapse due to right-wing threats on democracy, according to a recent New York Times piece that called to intensify war games for scenarios concerning the 2024 presidential elections, such as insurrection, secession, insurgency, and civil war, in order to avert political decay of the country. Avert the decay, the political decay of this country is just about complete, don't you think? And just so that I'm not just reporting what Breitbart says here, it says we need, first off, let me read their tweet. Here's a New York Times tweet. War game, tabletop exercises, operations, research on the prospect of American political conflagration. What a great word, conflagration. Including insurrection, secession, insurgency, and civil war should be proceeding at a higher tempo, write Jonathan Stevenson and Stephen Simon. It goes on to say, and the title of the essay was, "We Need to Think the Unthinkable About Our Country." It says, and it begins by deeming the U.S. as perhaps even more alarmingly fractious and divided 1 year after the January 6th. They call it something else. I call it the picnic. Regrettably, the right has sustained its support for former President Donald Trump and continued its assault on American democratic norms. Okay, we know what a bunch of BS that is, right? The problem is that half the country believes it. Now, where are we fighting? Remember, we talk about America needing a reversion, need you to be a part of it. Where we need to revert is all those people out there, those mush minds out there that don't understand one way or another, whether that's true. They'll read this kind of drivel and they believe it. Well, we know some of them, right? You know some of them. I know some of them. We need to have discussions with those people and kind of redirect them away from that craziness so that when they read stuff like that, they'll go, well, that's not true. That's silly. We can have an effect. We have to have our effect. Realize this is what they're being force-fed out there. and we have to be ready to balance that out, to contraindicate that. Okay, Senator Roger Marshall, one of my senators here from Kansas, he's introducing the Fouchy Act. After a little skirmish, I guess Fauci called him a moron, and he didn't like it. Well, Fauci's about to learn where his mouth is going to get him. So it says here, and this also is from Breitbart, Senator Roger Marshall, Republican of Kansas, is planning to introduce the Fouchy Act after a heated exchange with Dr. Anthony Fauci at a Senate hearing this week. The spokesman for the Hill on Thursday said Marshall is creating here it is, financial accountability for uniquely compensated individuals. Fauci. That's cute, right? Because Fauci's records were not readily accessible to the public. Yeah, well, okay, Fauci, what do they say? He's the highest paid federal employee, and yet his financials weren't available, and he got into it with a senator, and finally, some of our senators actually are standing up. How about that? And taking it back to him. Okay, U.S. grocery shortages deepen as the pandemic dries supplies. There must have been a reason that I put this up here. Let me see. It says this from Reuters. High demand for groceries combined with soaring freight costs and Omicron-related labor shortages are creating a new round of backlogs at processed food and fresh produce companies, leading to empty supermarket shelves at major retailers across the United States. I've seen that. You've probably seen that. I was at the store just yesterday, and I was surprised at all of the vacant shelves. Now, if you are preparedness minded, if you are one of those that came over from integrative preparedness, we talk about this stuff all the time, a person who is prepared, it's not going to bother them, as much. I mean, you might not be able to get that one little thing that you don't usually stock and say, I think I want one of those tonight with dinner, and you go down there and it's not there. But it's not like you're going to be running out of food. And for anybody who's here on this channel and not particularly involved in preparedness, I highly suggest that you do go over and catch us on Integrative Preparedness channel, and we talk about this kind of stuff. Anyway, Myers said, Myers? Who's Myers? Shay Myers, CEO of whatever, Produce, which grows onions, watermelons, and asparagus along the border of Idaho and Oregon, said he's been holding off shipping onions that's why I couldn't get onions, to retail distributors until freight costs go down. He said transportation disruptions in the last 3 weeks caused by a lack of truck drivers and recent highway blocking storms have led to a doubling of freight costs for fruit and vegetables producers on top of an already elevated pandemic prices. We typically will ship East Coast to West Coast. We used to do it for about $7,000. He said today it's somewhere between $18,000 and $22,000. Yeah, that's right. I think I told you sometime back that our supplier with Christmas lights, their container costs coming from China had been about $5,000 per container, and now it's up to around $27,000. So I know that you don't whether you want food or Christmas lights, it's a little bit different, but everything's going up. But that's why proper planning, looking ahead, and being ready is so important. It's going to get worse. That's the point. It's going to get worse. You need to be ready. Get ready. Stock up what you may be low on. And for those of you who are kind of new to preparedness, stock up a lot more than you think you will ever need, because you won't be disappointed. And whether you'll have it if you need it, and the price is simply going to go higher and higher and higher. So the dollar you spend today is going to hurt you a lot less than the $5 you spend 6 months from now for the same thing. Okay, here's good news from the Washington Free Beacon. Hospital system backs off race-based treatment policy after legal threat. Well, how about that? You remember that guy that they were giving, let's see, one of the largest hospital systems in the United States gave race more weight than diabetes, obesity, asthma, and hypertension combined in its allocation scheme for COVID treatments, only to reverse the policy after threats of legal action. Yeah, it's because, SSM Health, a Catholic health system that operates 23 hospitals across Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Wisconsin, began using the scoring system last year to allocate scarce doses of Regeneron, the antibody cocktail that President Donald Trump credited for his recovery. A patient must score at least 20 points to qualify for the drug. The rubric gives 3 points to patients with diabetes, 1 for obesity, 1 for asthma, and 1 for hypertension, for a total of 6 points. Identifying as non-white or Hispanic race, on the other hand, nets a patient 7 points, regardless of age or underlying conditions. So, if you're not white, you get more points than all of those other things put together, which means you white folks are screwed. But they reversed that because finally, people stood up. People are starting to stand up. Here's a cute one from Red State. House distributes KN95 masks to all their people, stamped "Made in China." Made in China. Do you remember when the Army went through that thing years ago, when they wanted to make everybody feel special, so they were going to give everybody berets, right? Because everybody, everybody wanted to have a beret because special forces and the Rangers had berets, and so in order, I think it was under Clinton, in order to make everybody feel better about themselves, it's okay, we're going to have berets for everybody. Everybody's a beret of some kind now. Well, so I think they put them all in black berets, and it turned out that all the berets were made in China, along with most of the American flags that they were using at the time. Okay, well, a political strategist says, and I think this is Doug Schoen, if I'm not mistaken, he says that Hillary Clinton is the only viable national candidate for the Democrats in 2024. And pollster Doug Schoen, that's right, Doug Schoen. He's a Democrat and he's a lib, but he usually knows what he's talking about. And he says that Hillary is the only viable national candidate for Democrats in the 2024 presidential election. Isn't that sad, and won't that be fun? Looks like we have 1 or 2 more things here. I don't know. Why global leaders are terrified. Let me see how much time I'm doing here. I don't know. Okay, if I read this fast, I'm going to have enough time, but we will see. It might cut off. Why global leaders are terrified about social cohesion erosion. Nope, I'm going to hold off on that. I think that takes a little bit. That's worth a video of its own. We'll get back to that later so that I don't run out of time here. That's kind of what we're dealing with today on this Martin Luther King Day. Like I say, I'm going to put the link down there to Crowder's 5 things you should know about Martin Luther King to get a real idea about what the man is about. You might know them all. If you don't, share them with somebody. And keep an eye on all this. So we see things moving faster and faster and faster. And this is why I say, and you all know as well, that America needs a reversion. It needs you to be a part of it. It needs me to be a part of it. It needs all of us to be a part of it. If we all do what we can turn this thing around, simply because crazy can do a lot of damage, but crazy won't win unless you let it win. And most people can be convinced. Most people, not all, but most people can be convinced if you simply have the information and the knowledge and you share it with them properly. And that's what we try to do here. We do it in kind of a funny way, although a serious way, and give you some of the ammo that you need to talk with it about your misguided friends out there. So you all have a good day. Thanks for being here. Remember, please like and subscribe and share. And if you'd like to support us, go over and join us for $1 over on the Patreon channel. I'll put that link down here. And you all have a good day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.